Welcome to meeting number 63 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health. Today we will start the study of oversight of medical devices, breast implant registry, with a briefing from departmental officials. During the first hour, we will then proceed to committee business in camera during the second hour. In accordance with our routine motion, I'm informing the committee that all remote participants have completed the required connection tests. Just for the benefit of our panel, I want to make you aware that we have a convention in the committee that the member might interrupt you if you give an answer that's longer than the question. So if you get a short question, please try to do a short answer. There is some flexibility, but I want to make you aware that that's how we operate here. So we have today from Health Canada David Boudreau, Director General, Medical Devices Directorate, Health Products and Food Branch; from Canada Health Infoway, Abigail Carter-Langford, Chief Privacy and Security Officer; and from the Canadian Institute for Health Information, Juliana Wu, Director, Acute and Ambulatory Care Information Services. Thank you all for being with us today as we embark on this study. We're going to start with you, Ms. Boudreau. You have 5 minutes for an opening statement. The floor is yours.
Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie de m'avoir.
Mr. Chair, I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to give an update on the work of Health Canada as the regulator of medical devices to support the safety of breast implants in Canada. We recognize that breast implant safety is important. Today, I would like to tell you more about Health Canada's role in regulating medical devices, some considerations for a breast implant registry in Canada, and finally, the actions the Department has taken to improve safety and mitigate the risks associated with breast implants. Health Canada's regulatory responsibility under the Food and Drugs Act and the Medical Devices Regulation is to make sure that medical devices on the Canadian market meet the applicable quality, safety, effectiveness requirements. We do this prior to their licensing, and we continue to monitor them once they are on the market. Manufacturers of medical devices must comply with the safety, effectiveness, quality, and labeling requirements of the regulations in order to sell their devices in Canada. When we issue a medical device license, it means that its benefits outweigh the potential risks and that the potential risks have been reduced as much as possible. When an increased or new risk with a licensed medical device is identified, Health Canada takes the appropriate action. Our work is supported by new provisions in the regulations that came into effect in 2019 and 2021, which include mandatory reporting of medical device incidents by hospitals and enhanced post-market surveillance, such as requiring registrants to submit summaries that assess the risk-benefit profile of their medical devices. It is important to note that the delivery of healthcare services and the regulation of healthcare professionals is a provincial and territorial responsibility. Health Canada does not provide individual medical advice or regulate the medical practice of physicians. I would now like to address the concept of a breast implant registry. While registries are often used to support research, it is not a common mechanism to monitor the safety of medical devices. The Canadian Joint Replacement Registry is the only medical device registry in Canada. It supports clinical research and it is managed by the Canadian Institute for Health Information. A breast implant registry could be proposed for two different broad purposes. It could serve to support patient safety notifications, also referred to as track and trace, or have a research purpose, or both. Health Canada participated in a recent Best Brains Exchange meeting that examined the question of a registry for breast implants. The discussion highlighted the complexity of a breast implant registry, and there was no consensus on next steps. Potential challenges were discussed, including privacy, data sharing, related to the management of personal health information, as well as the role of private clinics, which hold most of this health information. Even in the absence of a registry, the data available to Health Canada through medical device incident reports and scientific literature has allowed us to take decisive action when required. Here are 4 concrete actions Health Canada has taken to improve safety and mitigate risks. And they include performing safety reviews of breast implants in 2017, 19, and 22. This led us to suspend licenses for macro-textured breast implants due to an increased risk. Requesting yearly reports from manufacturers to help identify potential new or increasing risks. Requesting updates to breast implant labeling, including a patient decision checklist. Sharing information about breast implants with the public via different tools, website, subscription service, etc. In addition, following the announcement of Health Canada's Medical Device Action Plan in December 2018, the Department established the Scientific Advisory Committee on Health Products for Women in 2019. Through the deliberations of this committee, we have gathered information about breast implants, including patient testimonials. These actions for breast implants are a significant investment in risk assessment and management activities by the department and go beyond what is typically performed to manage risk for other medical devices. I want to close by thanking the committee for conducting this study and inviting the Government of Canada to provide remarks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Boudreau.
Next, from the Canada Health Infoway, Abigail Carter-Langford.
Juliana will speak first. Thank you.
Juliana Wu, Director, Acute and Ambulatory Care Information Services. You have the floor.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today with my colleagues from Health Canada and Canada Health Infoway on the important topic of breast implant safety in Canada. My organization, the Canadian Institute for Health Information, or CIHI, is an independent, not-for-profit organization created by provinces, territories, and the federal government almost 30 years ago. Our core mandate is to deliver comparable and actionable information to accelerate improvements in healthcare, health system performance, and population health in Canada. We have over 30 data holdings, and our collection of personal health information is limited to the purposes of our mandate, which is around health system performance management and reporting. Some examples of our work include reporting on wait times for priority surgeries, annual health spending in Canada, health workforce information, and the impact of COVID-19 on health systems across the country. Ultimately, we work to provide information to help improve healthcare systems and the health of Canadians. To the subject of today, first and foremost, CIHI recognizes the importance of breast implant safety for Canadians, and we hope our experience in managing medical device registry can help inform this discussion. CIHI manages several clinical registries, including the Canadian Joint Replacement Registry for hip and knee joint replacements, with over 137,000 surgeries performed every year across Canada. The registry collects information on devices such as artificial hips and knees that were implanted in each patient. The registry was established in 2001 from a collaboration between CIHI and the Canadian Orthopedic Association. It started out with voluntary participation from orthopedic surgeons and evolved over time as several provinces mandated the submission of data directly from health facilities. Of note, this joint replacement registry is not a safety recall registry. CIHI as an organization is not set up or provided with a mandate to perform such care-related functions. The goal of our joint replacement registry is to support evaluation of the costs and outcomes of the medical devices and to inform clinical best practices and service delivery for these surgeries. From our experience managing several registries at CIHI, we think there are several key considerations in establishing a new breast implant registry. Number one, it will be very important to establish clear objectives and intended purposes for the registry. Tracking and tracing implants to facilitate safety recall notices versus measuring health system activities and outcomes are two very distinct objectives with very different implementation pathways and considerations. Number two, understanding how data can flow from private surgeons' offices all the way to patient notification is also important. We know that about 85% of breast implant procedures in Canada are performed in private settings. The willingness from both the providers and the patients to participate in this registry would be necessary for it to be effective in achieving its traceability goals. Also, data collection and flow from private clinics do not readily exist today in Canada and will require substantial foundational work to explore legislative framework and the infrastructure required. With that, I thank the committee for the interest in CIHI and the opportunity to be here today, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Carter-Langford, for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for having us speak to you today on this important women's health issue. At Canada Health Infoway, we want to ensure that all Canadians have equitable access to excellent health care and health information. We believe that a more connected and collaborative system is a healthier system. Infoway brings a pan-Canadian focus to improving the patient experience, improving the health of Canadians, and unlocking value for the health system. Since our founding, Infoway has been working to develop consistent standards for electronic health records and to make sure those records can be accessed securely by patients. Canadians who have access to their personal health information have more control in managing their own health, and improving access to health information is critical in helping Canadians live healthier, happier lives. With greater access to personal health information, patients can better track and understand their overall health and conditions, better manage their health, have more informed and productive conversations with their healthcare providers, and enjoy fewer in-person visits to a doctor or emergency room. This means better service, better patient experience, and better outcomes. By integrating digital health into the healthcare experience, we can unlock more efficient and accessible models of care. We can facilitate faster, more seamless and secure information sharing. The numbers speak for themselves. 44% of people who have accessed their personal health information said they avoided at least one in-person visit to a doctor or a hospital. The problem is that only 1/3 of Canadians have accessed their health information electronically. To ensure that more Canadians can access their records, Canada Health Infoway is building a pan-Canadian roadmap, which will lay out the concrete steps that the federal government, along with the provinces and territories, will need to take to deliver a patient-centric model for a safe, secure access and management of health information. To do this, Canada Health Infoway has identified a number of near-term projects that we think will help us to address these objectives. They include working to make sure that patient data can be easily transferred between the various hospital, provincial, and private practitioner databases safely, and building a system so that referrals and consults to specialists are streamlined. The Pan-Canadian Roadmap will inform and guide all jurisdictions to progress toward the same standards, allowing each to do so at their own pace, but ensuring a consistent standard between those jurisdictions. Thank you to the committee for allowing Infoway the opportunity to share some of the knowledge we've gleaned from that work on an important topic such as the breast implant registry. I look forward to answering any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Cette étude est ici.
This study is before us thanks to Mr. Thériault's motion. And Mr. Kitchen and Mr. Thériault have switched places. So we're going to start for the next 6 minutes with Mr. Thériault. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's greatly appreciated. Mr. Boudreau, when I listen to you, I have the impression that Health Canada is doing everything that needs to be done to ensure women's safety. But it's funny, when I read the literature, I have the opposite impression. For example, on the 8th of September, the FDA considered that all implants, whether they're silicone, saline, or textured, macrotextured, can cause cancers. That was the 8th of September, 2021. What have you done to check on that since? Mr. Chairman, obviously we're closely interested in everything that's happening internationally and that what's being done on the safety of breast implants. So we are in communication with the U.S. FDA on this issue. And in Canada, there's been no case reported of that precise kind of cancer. And we haven't had enough signals for the moment to change our interpretation of the profile of those instruments. So nothing could have been done because you haven't. you don't have what you have to proceed with that. Okay. Now, it's known, and the FDA recognizes diseases from breast implants. Do you recognize this illness at Health Canada? And if not, why not? Mr. Chairman, Health Canada is carrying out a risk assessment on breast implant illnesses, and we will be publishing this over the next few months on Canada's position on these illnesses. For the moment, there's no position to share on that. The FDA assesses the same materials as you. So what the FDA is discovering with the means that they have, with using the precautionary principle, wouldn't you act quickly? Mr. Chairman, we will act quickly when we find it necessary to do so based on the exchanges we have with our international partners. And for the moment, it wasn't enough to bring in different measures to those already put in place. So there is monitoring, and this is done on a regular basis by the department, but we are not prepared yet to modify our approach on breast implants for the moment. It is known that there's a risk of breast implants. There are cancers, lymphomas, etc., and it's therefore essential that women be informed of this, although currently in Canada, there's no consent formula that is a uniform one. It's not a standard one. Plastic surgeons can write up the surgeon that they wish of enlightened consent. So why does Health Canada not, given the fact that they should, or they don't want to ban them, but given what I've just said from the 8th of September 2021, what the FDA published, why was Health Canada not proactive and put in place a consent formula that would allow to ensure that both the plastic surgeons and women can tick the boxes, and so that we make sure that the consent is indeed enlightened? So it seems it's not difficult to do something like this. Mr. Chairman, the department ensures that manufacturers put at the disposal of women instructions as well as a formula that we call a checklist to allow the patient to have an enlightened discussion with their doctor or surgeon. So that's already provided for. It's already something available to women. The department's currently working on developing a new version that will be available on Canada's website. We're working with representatives from patient groups who have also elaborated on this formula with the department, and that will give us a more standardized approach and uniform approach for women who want to have that very specific discussion concerning the risks that breast implants pose before they are put in. Well, you're aware that for the vast majority of enlightened consent forms don't talk about secondary effects. They talk about potential ones of anesthesia and the surgery itself, but not the toxic effects connected to the actual implants. You're aware of that. All of the women who have been talking to us about their problems 8 years later or 15 years later, it could even be 20 years later, have always said that they were not informed. So does that concern you? And you're going to remedy that situation through some kind of form that you will make mandatory to each of these surgeries? Well, Mr. Chairman, as I said, we are concerned by this. There is already a checklist that exists, and it's part of the process for an implant when the person goes to a surgeon. And it's up to the medical establishment to ensure that this conversation takes place between the patient and the surgeon. So not only, Mr. Chairman, the surgery, but also the risks posed by the actual implant. And in that checklist, furthermore, which has already been given to doctors and to the patients, the relative risks of cancers, the lymphomas that you've mentioned, are mentioned. And no, but you can't ensure that this is done. You don't have access to reviewing this list? Well, Mr. Chairman, it really is up to the medical establishment, the practitioners and the surgeons to do this. But if there was a registry, this consent form could be the way into this registry. It could be the opening step, and it would mean that we could have the registration of what is implanted, and we could also ensure that indeed the consent, despite the heightened risks, because they are very heightened risks to these things, that the patient has consented. But without a registry, how can we ensure that 8, 10, 15, 25 years later, we can make the connection between the problems, the cancer, the lymphomas, with the implantation that happened 15 years earlier? That is all the time you have, Mr. Theriault. Mr. Boudreau, a quick answer. Yes, Mr. Chairman, there is already a registration card that is planned that is sent to the surgeon and to the patient that allows the patient to be able to send the card to the manufacturer and keep a copy themselves, so they have information on the implant that was put in, and also for the manufacturer to be able to follow up with the surgeon and the patient if necessary, if there were any recalls or anything of the sort. Thank you.
6 minutes for Ms. Sidhu, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, all the witnesses, for appearing in front of the committee. My first questions to the Health Canada. I know my colleague is asking about, and then you said that there's a checklist, but how does Health Canada ensure that all healthcare professionals who perform breast implant procedures are properly trained and qualified?
So, Mr. Chair, it's not the Department of Health Canada to determine how the practice of medicine is applicable, and so this would really falls under the provincial and territorial health authorities to ensuring this.
Thank you. And you talked about in your testimony there's a scientific advisory committee. Can you tell us what is the role of that scientific advisory committee?
Yes, so this is a scientific advisory on women's health products. This was established back in 2019. That was following the media situation that took place on implantable devices back at the end of 2018. The committee is composed of healthcare professionals, individuals with patients, as well as individuals that are familiar with women's health products. And the committee was able to provide recommendations to the department when it comes to specific issues, for instance, related to breast implants and or meshes.
Thank you. Can you provide any data on complications and adverse events associated with the breast implants in Canada?
So we do have a medical device incident reporting mechanism that exists in Canada. And so we have hospitals that are mandated to filing incident reports, manufacturers that are also mandated, and we can also receive reports from on a voluntary basis from Canadians and other parties. And so these are the foundation for signal detections in Canada for any issues, problems related to health products, including medical devices.
And how does Health Canada monitor and track the safety of breast implants once they're on the market?
So that would be one of the mechanisms in place to ensuring the safety of breast implants once they're on the market, would be to assess these reports that are filed to the department related to incidents. Another aspect would be to keep assessing the literature, scientific literature, as well as engaging with international partners who also have incident reporting mechanisms in place, and also look for literature in this context.
And my next question is to Canada Health Infoway. What challenges or limitations might be associated with the implementation of central breast implant traceability registry, and how could these be addressed?
So some of the challenges are a bit foundational. This is one of the more complex problems we would see in digital health. And that came out of the conversations in the breast-brain exchange that was hosted. It's, as Juliana noted in her comments, one of the areas where there's perhaps less connectedness to the broader digital health ecosystem is that private practitioner's office. So that first point of connection needs to be addressed to ensure that in private surgeons' offices where the majority of these types of procedures are being taken, that data is rendered accessible to the broader system. So you see work in the provinces, work being supported by Canada Health Infoway and Health Canada to remedy that information pathway so we can start to see that information percolate up and get greater connectivity between that private physician's office that's privately paid and the rest of the system. Because if we look at where we still have, as Canada, some outstanding gaps, that's one of those prime pieces. So that's one piece of the equation, is making sure that information is broadly accessible and can be shared with others, and that's a problem that's being tackled now, particularly coming out of COVID and the understanding of the importance of that kind of information. So that's one area of improvement. Another area of improvement is connecting the patient to that information. And as I mentioned, again, there's a fair bit of work underway, but there's also some opportunities for legislative modernization, particularly at the provincial level, to ensure that Canadians' right of access to their health information is better facilitated and facilitated electronically. There are also some practical issues. We've had some conversations about consent and typically CIHI's data infrastructure is based not on a consent model, recognizing the importance of health system use of information. But in practice, there's variability in how consent is obtained, and that's a process. So some work would need to be done to look at the rates of consent expected for those women who are receiving those procedures and how that information can translate into broader system holdings like those at CIHI or at the provincial level.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, do you have a 30 seconds? Anything else you want to say to the committee?
I suppose that what I would say, if you'll forgive me, is that this is a complex problem, but it represents an example of a number. And it is our perspective from a roadmap as Infoway that the opportunities to better augment the readiness across the system, improve those pathways of information through the system to the patient. There's some foundational work that should be addressed and addressed in partnership with the provinces that would have the knock-on effect of improving the conditions for a registry like this one.
Thank you. Dr. Kitchen, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here. It's greatly appreciated, and your comments. As you're aware, we're looking at a study here on dealing with medical devices, and we've heard a number of different aspects of where you've looked at it. And what I think we're hearing from you is that, well, we've discussed about a registry, but we really haven't come to a decision whether we should do it or not. And there are challenges with that. There are many countries around the world that have registries in this area that are doing it. For example, Australia in 2015 has in place, and other countries around the world. And so I'm wondering, have you looked into those and discussed with those countries avenues to advance this for Canada? Sure, yeah, okay. Sure, Mr. Boudreau.
Okay. Mr. Chair, so we did look into this. We were able to actually, during this Best Brain Exchange event, to have colleagues from the U.S., from UK, and the Netherlands that were able to provide more information about how they were able to implement some of the challenges that they face. So to give you some concrete aspects that were discussed. So for the U.S., for instance, their registry is meant for research purposes and not for traceability purposes. And it's not something that is mandated. So it's basically something that patient would need to consent, and there is nothing really to oblige patients to enroll. And so they have a low participation rate in the U.S. And because of that, they aren't even able at this time to fully leverage their registry for research purposes and or for signal detection. And so this is one of the aspects that was communicated to us. The UK, for instance, they had the registry back early in the 2000s, and they had to cancel their registry because at the time they were having a very low participation rate and were able to, again, leverage their registry for research purposes. They now have started again a registry just a few years ago, but the main change between before and now is that they have a single system for patient information. So this is not decentralized anymore, and they have better ways to ensure data sharing and patients to fully participating in their registry, which is not the case in Canada. So we were able to learn more about some of the challenges, their journey, how they were able to implement or, in some cases, fully change the approach that they've taken before.
Thank you. So, in my years of practice, and when I finally stopped practicing, I'm old school. I'm paper. And just my practice when we were starting to transition into computer, and you've sort of touched on it a little bit, where there's getting that information from the practitioner as well as getting the information from the patient, both of which need to be consent informed. And I've seen where some of the registries around the world have basically said you can opt in or opt out. It's up to the individual. And that's a big concern. From a consent point of view, that number one, if the patient agrees to be there, what information is being protected? What can they opt out at any particular time? And how do they protect that privacy aspect? It's a huge challenge along those lines from a data sharing point of view, not to mention from a research point of view. Comments on that, if you would.
Thank you. You actually gave a far better synopsis of the issues than I probably would have, if you forgive me. But that is the heart of it. When we think about consent, it is both an act but also a process. So when we look at Canadian support for health system planning, that kind of thing, we are relatively strong, but it's far from 100%. And a lot of that comes to issues of trust and familiarity. Even in the context of an individual consenting to their treatment, there are complexities, and that's where that process piece kicks in. So often one of the concerns we hear in the context of our conversations is making sure there's an appropriate balance between what we ask of the patient from a consent perspective and how much time the clinician is spending with the patient, with the predominant focus of that conversation being about care. So there are a number of process considerations that come with asking consent and setting up a registry like this. It perhaps, from a literature standpoint, may make more sense for the patient notice component of it, like opting in to receive information about your implants and the future of that device, relative to health system planning, where the rates of consent, and Juliana can speak far more directly to this, the less than 100% likelihood of consent would impact the quality of the registry that came out of it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Ms. Wu, and perhaps you can touch on that as well, but I will throw another part, because you sort of talked about the joint replacement registry. In particular, we were talking about hips, knees, along those lines. Or was that purely on hips? Do we have it on knees? Hips and knees, okay.
Yeah.
So, but ultimately, it is that data information and that information. I'm just wondering if you could expand on that.
I can comment a little bit on the consent piece as well. So CIHI, given our role around health system performance management and statistical analysis, we're able to collect the data without patient consent, and primarily for that purpose governed under either health information-related privacy legislation in the provinces or public sector legislation. So the whole idea of flowing patient consent from private settings to an organization such as CIHI or any other organization, it's challenging right now. I don't think we've really had those options. The Canadian Joint Replacement Registry is a joint and hip replacement registry. It started out as a surgeon participation, right? So it is voluntary at that time. And we struggle with coverage, to be honest, in the early years because there was no mandate. It's only when the several provinces begin mandating the data submission on these surgeries into CIHI that we see coverage climb up to about 73-74%. And understandably, without sufficient coverage, even using the data for signaling is ineffective, right? And obviously not enough if there's no full participation for safety recall. So it's all tied together. It's a complex problem to get your consent from the patient, to get providers' infrastructure to set up to collect consent, maintain consent, manage withdrawal of consent if patients then decide to switch out the decision, and then how that governance is going to flow through from the patient to the private surgeon to the organization that hosts the data. It's challenging to figure out.
Thank you. Ms. Wu, Mr. Davies, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being here. Mr. Boudreau, I'd like to start with you. Can you confirm how many Canadian patients have been impacted by breast implant recalls in the last decade?
So Mr. Chair, the department does not hold this information. So patient information is with provinces and territories. And so we do communicate risks on our website so that this is broadly communicated to healthcare professionals and Canadians. And we have...
I was talking about recalls.
Yep, so the recalls are being...
Does your agency are you not responsible for regulating medical devices?
So we're responsible for regulating med devices, and we'd be communicating the recalls on our website. And then it would be with the manufacturers and the healthcare professionals who communicating with the patients directly. So the department does not hold patient information.
Okay, so I guess it would be fair to say that in Canada on a national basis, we have no idea on a national basis how many recalls happen on a given year in Canada with breast implants.
Just to clarify, we have understanding of the recalls, and so we know for which devices the recalls are taking place, for what reasons they're taking place, but we wouldn't be able to know the patients impacted.
You don't know how many? Correct? Okay. A 2018 Toronto Star CBC Radio-Canada investigation revealed previously unreleased federal data showing at least 1,400 Canadians had died over the previous decade in incidents involving various medical devices, while another 14,000 reported injuries. Can you confirm how many injuries and deaths related to breast implants have been reported across Canada over the last 10 years?
So, Mr. Chair, we would have this information. I don't have it with me, but this is something we could communicate.
Thank you. Can I ask you to send that to the committee for us? Thank you. My friend, I think Mr. Thériault spoke about the linkage between breast implants and cancers. I'm more familiar with the linkage between breast implant leakage and autoimmune disorders that are associated with that. Does your organization have any idea of the numbers of incidents across Canada of leakages of these implants and the number of allegations of autoimmune disorders that may be associated with that?
Again, Mr. Chair, this is information we could look into and provide the committee with this information.
Thank you. My colleague, Dr. Kitchen, mentioned other countries that have implemented breast implant registries of some type. My preliminary look indicated that Australia, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Sweden, and the United Kingdom have all implemented breast implant registries. I think you touched on this, Mr. Boudreau, but has Health Canada evaluated the effectiveness of breast implant registries in those jurisdictions, and are there any best practices that Canada could adopt from them?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we've looked into this. As I said, we had just recently in March 2023 conducted this best practice exchange where we were able to discussing with the US, the UK, and the Netherlands, where they were able to provide information on how they were able to implement their registry in their jurisdiction.
In the 2021 Medical Devices Action Plan Progress Report, Health Canada noted that the mandatory reporting and expansion of the Canadian Medical Devices Sentinel Network had not yet been expanded to include private clinics. I think that's been touched on. Given that medical procedures involving breast implants are most often performed in private clinics, why aren't they included in these measures?
Mr. Chair, acknowledging that this CMDS net at this time is only related to hospitals, the department will be looking into, has been looking into whether or not to expanding this to private clinics. At this time, no decision has been taken as to expanding this to private clinics.
I'm trying to understand why, though. I mean, obviously it's not jurisdictional because hospitals are regulated by the provinces. Why would we have mandatory reporting expansion in the area that does not perform the most number of implants? Why wouldn't you start with the venues where we know that breast implants are being implanted?
So, Mr. Chair, the expansion to mandatory reporting by hospital was not necessarily only focused on breast implants. It was focused on reporting of adverse events from drugs, medical devices, so health products more broadly. And so that led the department to starting there with hospitals. and there might be in the future expansions, but this is not something that is currently being looked into.
Have any time, Mr. Chair?
You still have a minute.
Thanks. Documents obtained by CBC News show that the federal government has wavered on establishing a medical device registry for decades. In a letter exchange dating back to 1988, Health and Welfare Canada, the predecessor to Health Canada, said it was looking into creating a national breast implant registry, but it warned, quote, costs could be considerable. Can you confirm how much Health Canada estimates it would cost to establish a national breast implant registry, and also if cost remains a central disincentive to that establishment?
So, Mr. Chair, the cost question is something that the department has not looked into. There are so many other questions that would need to be clarified before looking into the cost. First, which federal institution would be placed to implement a registry? What type of registry? So would it be for research purposes, for traceability purposes? And then the involvement of the provinces and territories, the health authorities, et cetera. So I think with all these considerations at this time, it's not possible to have information on the cost. What we know, though, is that this would be quite expensive, and perhaps my colleague from CIHI could provide more information on the cost related to the only registry that we have for medical devices.
Yeah, I don't think I can comment on cost estimates either, given so much other pieces have to be done first, foundational work.
Thank you. Mr. Genereux, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess jumping in off of that question, wasn't going to be my first question, but I'll kind of go with that. Has the department, has CIHI, or has InfoWay done an economic analysis on what this would cost or could cost? I'll start with you, Ms. Carter-Langford.
Or no?
No, Mr. Boudreau.
So as I said before, Mr. Chair, we're not at the stage to discussing cost. We haven't established, for instance, which federal institution would be in a position to doing this, and there are so many other factors related to the complexity that were discussed by my colleagues here. That's really
Mr. Chair. That's a really long no. And then Ms. Wu, haven't done it. So this has been, forgive me, but this has been a private member's bill issue since 2004, and that you would think that at least somebody would have done an economic analysis on what this potentially could have cost. So I'll just leave that for you, and we're going to write a report on this and essentially submit that. Would like to know, I guess, from you, Mr. Boudreau, there was a media report in 2019 from then President of the Canadian Society of Plastic Surgeons, CSPS, that stated CSPS believes a tracking system for breast implants is needed. I'll start with you. Again, you, Mr. Boudreau. Do you think this is an issue? Do you think there are women that are suffering right now because of this issue? A simple yes or no is also.
So, Mr. Chair, we're certainly preoccupied by the health of Canadians and women with breast implants.
So I think that's a yes. Yeah, I'll go with a yes. Ms. Carter-Langford, do you think this is an issue that women are facing?
So I don't know that I have sufficient expertise specifically in breast implant registries to comment on the relationship between a breast implant registry and the health of Canadians. There's no question that Canada Health Info is concerned about the health of women and Canadians generally.
And then Ms. Wu, I think this is an issue.
I've heard from patients with lived experience, but the connection to a registry or other measures is to be determined.
So I'll go with all yeses, I guess. And I think most people around this table too agree that there are women suffering, and it's unfortunate that there's not something in place or hasn't been something in place, regardless if the reasons within government jurisdictionally, whatever. I think from a compassionate level, there are women who are suffering right now because of this, and there is. We have been, I guess, as a parliament, been bringing issues like this forward since 2004 to try to find some path forward. When it comes to some of the, I guess your opening comments, Mr. Boudreau, on the purposes for this being research based or tracking based. I think, or patient safety notifications, I guess. Both of those seem legitimate to me. I would think both of those would be a sufficient reason, preferably both, as to why this could be set up. There is the support from obviously the associations. CSPS said back in 2019 has indicated this would be helpful. There seems to be since 2018 that Health Canada has embarked on a number of these reforms. Curious as to your opinion first, Mr. Boudreau, on what would be the fastest way to implement something like this? Is it to go right to the CSPS and say, like the U.S., you guys are responsible for this, we'll help with what we can, or is it going to the provinces? I guess the best and fastest way to do this.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like just to make a clarification. So, when the committee indicated here that we haven't done anything, it's not the case. I mean, we were able to provide more information on Health Canada website about the risks. We've been able to meeting with the Scientific Advisory Committee on Women's Health Products, and then make some clear updates. For instance, a data blog on the breast implants cancer. We were also able, Mr. Chair, to provide work on the checklist for patients. And to this question that is also asked about what would be needed for us to do to implement a registry, I mean, we were able to discussing this before about all the complexity related to data sharing, related to privacy of information as well, that my colleagues also mentioned to the committee.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just quickly, a blog, a checklist, and all this since 2004. Like, I don't think it's necessarily Mr. Boudreau's fault, and I don't mean to take it on you, Mr. Boudreau, but this has been going on for a long time, and the fact that those are the only things that seem to have been done on this, it's kudos to Mr. Theriault for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
I could actually expand it, but I was also instructed to have very short answers. Yep. But if you'd like me to expand, I could also expand and provide more information about what we've done. Mr. Johari may
give you that opportunity. Mr. Johari, you have the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. Building on the same theme, what we heard from Madam Wu was the fact that we need to do so many foundational things before we start looking at the registry. And then what I heard from you, Mr. Boudreau, was the fact that there are two different purposes that a registry could look at. One is for research, the other one is for what I call track and trace, and for recalls. And then what we heard from you, Madam Longford, is the fact that we need to make sure that we look at the integration of all these data between the private practitioners, between the patients who hopefully will opt in, so we'll increase the number. And we also heard from provinces gathering that information and sharing it. So it looks like between all three organizations, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of thought has gone into this. Yet we haven't had any let's say, any real action taken on it. And when I look at the fact that we've only had one registry, and that's for joint replacement, I look at many other implants that we use as human beings. I went through a cataract surgery, and I put a new lens in my eye, and it got recalled, so I had to go back and do another one. But there was nothing in the government. I just got a call, and my eyesight started deteriorating. So having said all of that as a background, and the fact that we really need a clear objective, why those two objectives seems to be in so much conflict as far as track and trace, whereas research that they can't both join hand and start working on this registry for both purposes. What is so fundamentally different about those two that it cannot, a single registry cannot handle it? Any of you can comment on that?
I can go first. So I think a single registry would both purposes could happen. But I think the fundamental question is around how the information and the data is going to flow in a consent. And that requires legislative and privacy review to do so, right? And that would also determine which organization can hold it. I think the challenge between safety recall versus research is that using CAIHA as an example, CAIHA as an organization can potentially host registry focused on research and system performance reporting. We are not in the world of patient safety recalls, right? So depending, yes, that might be one option, but I think depending on the objectives would determine the pathway of how this is going to be implemented, who can hold it, and who can govern the registry.
So what's the barrier of those two objectives coming together and working across all those levels? I mean, at the end of the day, we live in Canada, so there should be some cooperation. Go ahead.
So there is a fundamental legislative structure issue. The way our historical privacy legislation in the provinces have been built, it considers the delivery of health care with one structure, one governance structure, one oversight, one set of permissions, and research and health system use entirely separately. We see some really great work and progress in the at the provincial level to recognize that we're looking at it in our legislative structures the wrong way. It needs to be from the patient outward, but right now, the way our health system privacy legislation is structured, it's not built to enable that. It's built to treat those two functions not as a continuum, but two very separate activities. So that's why you'll see, as Juliana described, registries and research in one area, very separate and segregated from clinical use like track and trace.
So, Mr. Boudreau, when you were talking about some of the jurisdiction that you've had an opportunity to explore and get their feedback, you talked about where the successes in those jurisdictions who were successful because they had a single patient registry, which meant that all the health information, if I understood you correctly, that means all the health information of an individual carries in that record, whether it's for medical or whether it's for implant or whether it's for anything else. Did I understand you right?
So, Mr. Chair, maybe I can clarify. So in the UK, the approach that has been taken there is one where they centralize patient information. So there is one file for individuals as opposed to having this decentralized that it is here in Canada. So it's easier in that context when it comes to implement a registry and ensuring data sharing because it's all coming from one source, as opposed to here in Canada, we have a decentralized healthcare system with each province having authority over patient information. So, and then also within a province, there is also the complexity or the notion around private clinics versus hospitals, and so this is another area. For instance, there might be some provinces that may actually have to look into regulations or legislations to even have access to private clinic information. So that comes back to the complexity we were talking about. If we were to looking into implementing a registry for patient notification purposes in Canada, these would need to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Boudreau. Mr. Thériault.
Mr. Thériault for 2.5 minutes. Thank you. Earlier, you spoke about recalls. And when I listen to you, I have the impression that you're more responsible for instruments rather than the health of patients. 85% of these surgeries happen in private settings, and you're telling me that currently we don't have the data necessary. Mandatory reporting only concerns 15%, so from the hospitals. So I can't, as a Canadian, see if what the FDA is doing, saying that on the 8th of September 2021, these kinds of saline and silicone, especially macro-textured implants, cause cancers. I can't say that. I'm still collecting data, but only on 15% of where these interventions happen. So don't you find this unsafe for women? And don't you really think that a woman who wants to have implants put in for a breast reconstruction, who is dealing with a cancer, would have some fundamental objection to her being able to participate in a registry? Do you really believe that? Mr. Chairman, I'm not in a position to say what patients think, but what I can say is that we put in place a subscription system that allows women to be able to receive all alerts and information on these breast implants. So they can see that information on our data blog and also on the risks that might be new or increased risks concerning breast implants. So on your website, in terms of risks to breast implants, you talk about anaplastic lymphoma, and you recommend that the breast be examined. Well, what's the connection there? I mean, you know very well that that kind of cancer is not detected by a breast self-examination. These are problems that are autoimmune in nature, and that they will be found within the woman's organism, but not necessarily through this. I mean, could you not at least copy the risks that are published in the information published by the FDA more rigorously, and ensure that we could at least discuss these lymphomas a little bit more precisely, rather than just saying, you know, there aren't very many cases, and well, there aren't a lot of cases to report here. Why? Because you're only working on 15% of the places that are subject to this mandatory reporting. Mr. Chairman, Health Canada and the Canadian government were among the first to making it mandatory to report these incidents in the hospitals. This is not a practice that happens in the rest of the country. Well, why not the private clinics? Well, we're not there yet. You're not there yet. Okay.
For 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you've covered this, but just to clarify in my mind, the United States and the European Union have been working to assign unique barcodes to medical devices as a first step to eventually tracking them through the supply chain. Can you confirm if the Government of Canada is pursuing a similar approach?
Mr. Chair, we are looking into the notion of a unique device identifier system in Canada. So we've started investigating, assessing how this is being performed by other regulators, including the US FDA.
Okay. A 2018 report from CBC News quoted Nova Scotia surgeon Dr. Alex Mitchell as saying that, quote, there's no reliable medical device identification in Canada at present. Dr. Mitchell noted that when a device is recalled, it can take months to review hospital records, usually paper-based, to find and contact affected patients. In your view, could Canada provide faster notification to patients by creating a digital medical device registry?
At this time, when it comes to communicating directly with patients, this is something that provinces and territories have authorities over. The department is providing information as quickly as possible to Canadians through notices on the risks. And so this is something that was where we were able to at least inform Canadians when there are changes to the risk profile of our device.
Just one last general question. Unlike a lot of medical devices, there was a pervasive class action litigation over breast implants, both in the United States and Canada. Tens of thousands of women have joined these lawsuits, and there have been multi-$100 million settlements by breast implant manufacturers. Does that weigh into your thinking at all in terms of the urgency? Like, I note that we've created the first registry for, I think you said hips. Does it not make sense to do breast first? And I was going to ask, is there a gendered aspect to this? I mean, as far as I know, there's been no mass class action against hip replacement manufacturers. Why so slow on breast implants, given the litigation and the injuries that have occurred to date?
Again, Mr. Chair, the government was in a position to assess the risk profile of these devices through other means than registries. Also, just to bring back this notion that I've indicated, it's not because they have a registry, for instance, in the United States, that they are actually able to leverage their registry for the purpose of signal detection and or for the purpose of research, and so because of the low participation rate. So in Canada, the approach we've been taking was positive. We were able to take decisive actions, for instance, suspending macrotextured implants when we were able to correlate the risk profile to a type of cancer.
Thank you, Mr. Boudreau. Next, over to the Conservatives, Mr. Abuteo, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. The first question that comes to mind, the medical equipment used for this practice, is it Canadian-made, Do you know where the supplier is?
Mr. Chair, there are 4 manufacturers that are licensed in Canada, and these implants are not manufactured in Canada.
So do you know the source? I mean, they're licensed to be used in Canada, but do we know where are they made?
As I said they are not manufactured in Canada.
No, I know, but do you know where are they are manufactured?
I mean, I could go back to the committee. My understanding is that they would be manufactured in the States.
Okay, so when was the last time we've examined these equipment to make sure that they're safe and they're not causing any issues or any health issues?
So if I understood correctly, the question, Mr. Chair, we're looking for inspection on site. So an inspection on site took place in 2018. That was in the context of making sure that the manufacturers were reporting medical device incidents. And so we had inspectors that were able to visit manufacturing sites at that time.
What is the normal protocol for Health Canada if there was any leakage of reporting that those products are not safe? And what are the measures? Do you stop? Do you instruct the clinics to stop using them? How do you handle that?
Yes, so Mr. Chair, when the department is informed of a risk and that the risk is greater than the benefits, this is where that we would be taking some decisive actions that would be including recalls, suspension of license, changes of labels, and so there are many actions that could be taken to address the situation.
Do you have enough experts in the department to be able to do the proactive measures to make sure that these, because there will always be new products coming, and they could be more advanced, they could be some up to date. How do you make sure that the product, when it's new, is up to date, are safe for the patients?
Mr. Chair, so the regulations allow the departments to making sure that the devices are safe, effective, and quality before marketing the devices. So this is a pre-market evaluation, scientific evaluation. This is being conducted by government scientific individuals. And so the requirements for breast implants are the ones for the higher risk devices, so class 4 devices. And we do have the expertise at the department for conducting this pre-market scientific evaluation. And we also have the expertise once the devices are marketed to continue monitoring their safety and effectiveness on the market.
So if there's a product that is approved by FDA or approved by European Union and it's coming to Canada to be used here, do you take the reporting from these home countries in consideration while you're examining the product, or you just go by your own self-conduct?
Mr. Chair, we do consider marketing history of medical devices and how and where they were regulated by other trusted regulators. And so this would be part of the pre-market evaluation, scientific evaluations, considering these considerations.
So the integration on making sure that the whole process is safe, it takes the industry, takes the department, the Health Canada in general, and takes the provinces, plus the practitioners. Where do you see the problem is the standing in the way of making sure that we have a registry that is going to really solve the problem, as other countries have done so?
So, Mr. Chair, we've touched on a number of challenges that we'd be facing in Canada should we be looking into implementing a registry for breast implants, including data sharing, privacy of data, identifying as well the purpose of this registry, and also identifying the best federal institution that would be best placed to implementing and maintaining a registry like this one.
Direct question. If I'm listening today to all this conversation and all this testimony, I would conclude that the industry is the problem as far as standing in the way to make sure that we have registry. Is my conclusion correct, or is there any truth to that, you think?
So, Mr. Chair, I can't really speak to the industry, but I don't think this is the case in the context of the of previous conversations, I don't recall having industry suggesting that industry suggesting a registry should not be implemented.
Thank you, Mr. Boudreau. Last round of questions for this panel will come from Dr. Hanley for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thanks to the witnesses, all three of you, for appearing. Looking at Monsieur Thériault's original motion for the study, there are two parts. First is to look at the improvements that have been put in place since tightening Health Canada's rules, and you've touched on some of those. And second is to look at the feasibility of establishing a central breast registry. And I think both parts of this motion are important. We want to ensure that we want to keep a focus on what is the problem we are trying to solve, and is the solution the registry or something else. So I think the key question is whether a registry could effectively add to our capacity to monitor and respond to safety issues around breast implants, if not other medical devices. And I see the answer to that question is not straightforward due to the many limitations that you have brought forward. So I want to go back to the first part, mandatory reporting by hospitals and post-marketing surveillance. To Mr. Boudreau, can you maybe give a brief overview on how much difference these provisions have made, recognizing we don't know what we don't know, but is there a sense that the safety signal reporting has improved, that there's more exchange, that we're comparable to other nations with registry or not? I'm sure this would have been the subject of the Best Brains exchange that you responded to, so maybe you could give me a sense of that.
So yes, Mr. Chair, the system that we have in place, I would say, is robust enough, and for the department to conducting risk assessments based on the information that we're receiving through medical device incident reporting. Manufacturers are imposed or mandated to do this, hospitals as well. The manufacturers not only are mandated to do this, but also there are conditions that were imposed to their license where they need to report on cases of breast implant cancer. So with all this information, I believe the department is really in a position to conducting risk assessments, and I would say this is highly comparable to other regulators in the world.
Thank you. And I wonder, can you comment about the Health Canada email system? There's a registry, not a registry, I guess that's the wrong word, but a notification system. How does that add to that, maybe the effectiveness of the system?
So, Mr. Chair, if we're talking about the subscription approach we've provided Canadians. So basically in this context, Canadians could subscribe for receiving emails or notifications about changes to web pages, recalls related to breast implants, changes as well to our data blog on breast implant cancer. And so basically it's a mechanisms to receiving targeted information on breast implants and the risk profile of breast implants.
What would be the subscription rate? Do you know? Like, what's the sign up compared to the denominator?
I could, Mr. Chair, could get back to the committee with this information.
Thank you. Now, I want to turn to a bit more about the foundational changes. I think, Ms. Carter-Langford, you referred to that we need, and this ties in very much with many of our studies, particularly our workforce crisis study, also recent budget commitments on modernizing our healthcare data system. Clearly, there's a lot of work to do. I wonder if you could talk a bit about some of the key steps and challenges, both in improving patient accessibility to their own medical information, but also the exchangeability, the data sharing mechanisms, either within a jurisdiction, within a region, or for that matter, across the country.
Thank you very much. So as Canada, we've made a tremendous amount of progress in making sure that the tools used at the bedside directly with the patient are predominantly electronic. So we've done a great job of getting that foundational layer of digital health information. As you rightly note, the point we're at is starting to make those connections. And there's a fair bit of practical work that can be done there to ensure that regardless of what system is being used in a physician's office or in a surgeon's office, the data is being codified and standardized in a way that it can then be connected. And those connections and that standard-based work can occur across provinces or within provinces. So we believe creating that standardization and facilitating that standardization between tools is a critical part of building that foundation. Another piece, as I've noticed, is modernizing some of the legislative structures, implementing practical processes to get that 1/3 of Canadians who have access to their health information electronically closer toward the 100% we think would be beneficial. So those are the two areas of focus. There's also certainly further legislative optimization work around interoperability that would enhance. But if we have digital information across this country, we now need to make sure it's standardized and connected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carter-Langford. That concludes rounds of questions. I want to thank our witnesses for being here with us today. It gives us a good foundation as we embark on this study and some sense for the areas that we want to pursue in more depth with the panels yet to come. So thanks for being with us, and thanks for the patient way in which you've responded to the questions. And Mr. Boudreau, you're signaling that you might have something you wish to add. Go ahead.
If it's possible, Mr. Chair, thank you. If I could just mention something else to the committee and to you, Mr. Chair. The only way a registry would be beneficial to Canadians is if we get a full participation from all the different players. So that would be including, provinces, territories, health authorities, private clinics. That would also include patients, manufacturers. You would need basically have a full participation, because if you don't have a high participation rate, the registry won't be useful for signal detection or research purposes, and it would be only for the individuals who would have registered that would be able to provide information through traceability.
Thank you, Mr. Boudreau. I think that's a good note for us to end on, and there will be a discussion that we will undoubtedly have with the witnesses that come to future meetings. Colleagues, we're going to suspend while we go in camera for committee business. Thanks again to our witnesses. The meeting is suspended.
Thank you.